canonicity, canon, and what does that mean when it comes to video games? And that's why I titled the podcast, "Tripped by Canon," because, well, what tends to happen is that when you have a long series franchise, one show after another, one game after another, eventually you run into problems of continuity. Especially the fandom likes to stick to canon, and so writers and designers can get into some kind of trouble. Not really trouble, but you get a lot of discussion about what is and isn't canon, and whether it's not important, and whether it's useful. And we wanted to talk about that, especially talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake last week, so I thought we will continue talking about that in more general terms. It also was inspired by a very excellent video, Renegade Cut, link to it in the chat, from Star Trek Generations is good.
Well, I haven't gotten around to see that one. I've been wanting to.
I disagree that Generations is good, especially now that I realize who the writer was. Ronald D. Moore happens to be the writer of Battlestar Galactica, the remake.
Yeah.
Oh boy, yeah.
So I think I don't think I've ever sat through and watched the whole discussion or the whole movie. Hang on. I don't think we're live. I don't see us on your channel.
I'm going live right now. Let me check.
Even though it says streaming.
Yeah, it says streaming.
Oh, there we go. It was playing. It just went back to whatever your last stream playing automatically.
Sorry about that. It happens.
Okay, yeah. So I can hear you too. I was just making sure that we're
on. Yeah, it has happened before, folks. So
I think was it last week that we had we were off for a few minutes, or I think it was just your audio.
Well, we had the background noise that was terrific. So that was the week before that we lost about 10 to 15 minutes of.
Yeah, so Star Trek Generations, I don't think I've ever seen the whole thing. I think I've seen half of the movie. It's just catching it on reruns on cable TV, way back in the day. And even then I thought it was just kind of weird. And that was before I was really that deep into Star Trek. I watched reruns of The Next Generation, and that's about it. Back in high school. But even then, I thought that was just okay, that's it. It's just stuff happens.
Yeah. So we're gonna be talking about that, but before that, of course, we're gonna do the news. Let's start with Valve by Kotaku. Zach Wyzen. Even after a large increase due to Half-Life Alex, less than 2% of Steam users own VR headsets. Half-Life Alex helped lead a large surge of new VR headsets being connected to Steam, according to data from Valve. However, this percentage of users own VR headsets still hovering around 1%. According to recent hardware survey for Valve, the first since Alex was released back in late March, new Half-Life game convinced a lot of people to buy or plug in all VR headsets. Road to VR estimates that over 950,000 new headsets were connected to Steam last month, which according to the site is the largest single platform. Nearly a million. Alex is almost certainly it's likely that some of the headsets aren't newly played purchased devices. How Valve collects data makes it impossible to figure out how too many specifics makes all the data collected and fuzzy. So yeah, I mean, we talked about this before, how basically Half-Life Alex was a vehicle for VR. And while nearly a million new headsets were connected to Steam, so people actually did play. Quite a bit of people played. Compared to the fact the massive size of this particular franchise, and that it's a sort of core franchise to Valve's identity, that's a very low number, especially in modern gaming, where it's easy where numbers like 3 million are considered poor compared to 10 even 15. and you need to use the headset in order to play this because it's a full on 3D game. So
Hmm.
yeah,
And I've heard good things about it. How the 3D works, or the whole VR stuff works. But even then, I don't think it's it's enough to really get people into it. I mean, I still haven't gone and bought a headset.
this is sort of a follow up to an old news again from Kotaku. After nearly 2 decades, Microprose is making strategy and simulation like fate. We talked about this before. The company founded by Sid Meier and Bill Bailey back in 1992, which who might play either original versions of or later versions of PlayStation and XCOM from that, and also Gunship, and like Eagle, and many others. Falcon. No, I don't think Falcon. Actually, yeah, my Falcon plus Pirates, Bibles, different versions, Pirates Gold, etc. The company now, it's basically the brand is owned by an Australian company. They're releasing several games. Actually, they're basically a publisher now more than a maker. Microprose was a little bit of both back in the day. Any company.
Hmm.
Um, Mentioning a couple of them are basically naval games. One is the Sea Power by Triassic Games, which is sort of a NATO versus Warsaw Pact. One is a RTS like, which is what to simulate in Texas, as described. Carrier game from Bright Dot Dreams game Task Force. I'm happy that this is happening, right? That they're putting out games. I might even try them uh, in the future. But yeah, it's it's the mixed bag, I suppose. It's not the original, but at the same time,
Yeah.
you know, we'll have companies putting strategy games, especially strategy games, which tend to um, not get as much shine these days as other types of genres. They've sort of had their heyday, and now not so
Yeah.
much.
I mean, we still have like Sid Meier's like Civilization. I guess that would be considered a strategy game. And I mean, we have RTSs, but I don't think there's anything like that's. I think it's sort of past its prime. It I guess we can throw it in the same category as like Telltale games and stuff, or interactive dramas like Telltale games, or FMB videos too,
Yeah.
FMB games.
Microprose also was one of the big proponents. I mean, you talk about Civilization, that was the X4, types of games like Conquer, Explore, Expand, something other, Exterminate.
Yeah,
Uh,
and Exo and Micropose is was like a pretty well known studio at the time. I still stumble across videos that talk about like their old games, and there's still a lot of them still hold up.
Thank you
It's
for the follow. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you for the follow,
oh
Poke in 1984.
cool.
Is that Russian, perhaps? That's why I misnamed it. Hopefully. So sorry. You will go ahead.
Yeah, so then there's the I guess the issue too is this isn't going to be the Micropost of the past, or it isn't. It usually isn't the same people that were behind old classics and stuff.
No, I mean,
And
for example, Sid Meier has continued with Civilization else and stuff. So yeah, no, not the same. And talking about Australia, 5 Australians charged following CS:GO match fixing investigation. This is on PC Gamer by Sean Prescott. The players are alleged to have thrown matches they placed bets on. Charges have been laid against 5 Australians following a police investigation into Counter-Strike Global Offensive match fixing. This follows an initial arrest of 6 players back in August when it was alleged that they had thrown matches to gain winnings from bets they placed. Victoria Police statement: 4 20-year-olds and a 27-year-old have been charged with use of corrupt conduct information for betting purposes.
hmm.
A very specific title. This offense can result to 10 years imprisonment in Australia. The five will face court in September. Interesting take right there. One of the alleged vendors also been charged with engaging in conduct that corrupts or would corrupt a betting outcome in an event or event contingency as well. So yeah, I mean, video games are not gambling, but oh boy, they tend to attract a lot of gambling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of those addicts so you can pretty much bet on just about everything.
Yeah. But the fact that it now is, as enough that multiple people, and I don't, no dollar signs are being thrown around, so we don't know how much they expected to win or had gambled. But that's interesting. I don't think it's a big deal, but talking about something that might be relevant, we're probably going to talk about this game later on, or at least series anyway, as part of the talk about canonicity. Yakuza, Like a Dragon, looks to be headed for Steam. A listing for Yakuza 7 has appeared on Steam DB by Andy Chalk. Wait a minute, Yakuza 7 is going to Steam. What happens to Yakuza 3? They might drop a bundle as well. Let's just look what the article
yeah. So I think with Yakuza 3 through 5, since that's going to be like a bundle. I know the physical release is going to be a big bundle. I think that's probably what's going to happen with the Steam release of those games.
Despite Yakuza series' popularity, there are many Yakuza games on Steam, just Yakuza 0, which is excellent. I agree. Yakuza Kiwami and Yakuza Kiwami 2 remakes. Last summer, series producer Daisuke Sato hinted a possible PC release of Yakuza 3, 4, and 5, which haven't actually happened yet, but it looks very much like Yakuza 7, Like a Dragon, the most recent game, is headed for. Yakuza Like a Dragon isn't listed on Steam yet, but it does appear on the Steam feed, which tracks games on the platform, including those in pre date. No information about the release date, but it's possible that it could be very close to the Western play launch. Date hasn't been set either. Yakuza Like a Dragon was released in Japan in January, but a worldwide release date hasn't been announced. It also means that they might get our hands on a new Yakuza game before the old ones. Oh, if my machine can run Yakuza 7, I will certainly try. I love the Yakuza game. Although I would like to play 3, 4, and 5 first, because I want my machine to be able to get new hardware to keep up. And also want to keep up with the story, talk about canonicity. So, but more Yakuza games to the West. Yeah, and by the way, Yakuza 7 does not have the same protagonist as Yakuza 0 to 4, I think. And it has a new combat system and everything else, so it will be intriguing.
And of course, there's also the spin-off Judgment.
Talking about going into the wild world of streaming and YouTubing. I think this was going to happen, but it did. YouTube secures PewDiePie with an exclusive live streaming deal. They shocked them. By the deal, YouTube says the biggest star won't get special treatment if he breaks a rule. Yeah, you pay him a lot of money, unless you're putting certain controls in. Yeah. 15 cents of the streamer world have been a number of big game named streamers declare themselves on one platform. Ninja Shroud and King Gothlion committing themselves to Mixer, while Dr. Lupo, King the Tat Man, and Lyric re-up with Twitch. Now YouTubers have re-signed with the biggest them all, announcing today they signed an exclusive streaming deal with Felix Helleberg, also known as PewDiePie. It's actually spread PewDiePie, but everybody says PewDiePie.
Yeah, it's PewDiePie or DiePie.
YouTube has been my home for over a decade. This is, quoting streamer. Streaming platform feels like an actual fitness and continues to look for ways to create content with fans. Why? YouTube has also been the site of Kelleberg's occasional outbursts of racism and anti-Semitism, including one which he paid 2 men in India to help assign death to all Jews, resulting in cancellation of the Scare PewDiePie reality Red. Same year, the user's racist slur during live stream, prompting developer Santo to file a MCA takedown requesting related Firewatch and. So he remains a controversial figure, but you know what they say: money talks.
Yep.
Now, I found this to be a very interesting. Creator of one of the worst viruses ever finally fesses up to 20 years later. This is by Paul Lilly, also in um, I Love You virus cost billions of dollars in damage control, but the author wanted to into. Apparently, I read the article. I guess it's not complex, but sort of techie stuff. This was a virus about 20 years ago, 2000s. Basically, put in an email saying "I love you." The email, love bug virus. According to the designer, was a man in Manila by the name of El de Guzman. He's now 44 years old, so before at the time. What he wanted to do with the virus was essentially gain access to email, logging using the virus. But this was an old-fashioned virus, like many viruses, that kept replicating, and not only replicated in your email, but also would look for JPEGs and MP3 and similar files, and then it kept replicating there as well. So it corrupted the files, and like a virus, kept replicating and wrecking your machine because you ran out of memory, you couldn't load, and corrupted it all. Made it The estimates of how much damage worldwide were made at least $10 billion, but according to the article, that could be. Yeah, oops, that's a thing that happened. But it was interesting, right? That talk about real life viruses today.
Yeah. I vaguely remember the "I love you" virus, but no.
I remember the monkey virus, monkey A and monkey B, and I had a computer, a Compaq, which was a 386, that got the monkey B virus, and it literally was a little screen come up, and it's like you are infected with a monkey.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, I think the only virus that I can think of that I ever caught that wasn't just like spam and spyware was like I don't know what it would have been called, but there's a virus that just like made my executable files like really take up a lot more space than they
Mm-hmm.
should have. So it was eating into my hard drive space.
I mean, that's most of what viruses kind of do. Is depending on the virus, they can corrupt files. So usually, the simplest form of virus is just replicating and just takes hard drive space until it can't operate it. And that tends to also directly or indirectly also way because garbage process. For those people who are following Assassin's Creed news, Assassin's Creed Valhalla will let you lead a Viking warband in Saxon, England, by Fraser Brown. What can I say about this news?
Oh, yet another Assassin's Creed game.
Set in Europe, right? Even though they're supposed to be worldwide thing, European history. Vikings, which I love Vikings, the idea of Vikings, but this feels like ah, that horse. It is
Yeah,
riding
well,
one more time. Right?
yeah, and of course, I think were they? I didn't watch the trailer, but do they have horns on their helmet, which is supposed to be incorrect?
I don't know if they're horny Vikings, but also Saxon England, dude. It would have been so cool if you actually did a Vikings dealing with the Rus, for example, Russia. So you can have
Hmm.
like the Mongols and Eastern Europeans and stuff like that. But I guess when you're French-based
No,
studios appealing to more speakers, uh,
you gotta stick to what you know. You
yeah,
can't have any originality. We're not gonna see like an Assassin's Creed set like in. I guess it wouldn't make sense that like Inca or Mayan times. It would have to be post-colonialism, I suppose.
I mean they kind of did that with Assassin's Creed 3, where you have one who is of
World War.
Native American descent, half and half,
Yeah,
right?
wasn't it the Revolutionary War or
Yeah.
something?
Rather than being one mercenary like in Assassin's Creed Origins, was it Unity or Origins? The protagonist is the head of a clan, so expect to lead your warriors in battles they scrap with Saxons take fortresses. I guess they want to keep that naval thing they hit, being very popular. Yes. Because one thing that Ubisoft knows how to do is once they grab onto some cool idea,
Yep.
they just keep into the ground.
Yeah, they added to the numbers on their paint by numbers canvas.
Yeah. Oh, actually, this is pretty cool. So let's patch. In other news, and this is more of a retro thing news, but I think it's still interesting. Massive Nintendo leak reveals all about the Wii generation, source code, design files, and more. Footage of N64 demos have also surfaced on the Dolan of Nintendo Life. There will be another massive Nintendo leak, but there's no need to worry about it spoiling as for any findings have nothing to do with Japanese gaming. A recent era user by the name of Aetherius explained exactly what the about. You may be aware, the last few weeks in 4chan, multiple Nintendo related all things leaking, starting with the old Pokemon ROMs, source code, the most recent 3DS debug ROMs, and key for all the consoles, PSI, now the biggest, the full source code, this design files, documentation, and pretty much everything you create, aka the Wii. How this happened, according to the article, servers were brought on were supposedly hacked. They got fired by Nintendo during the Wii generation to the hardware and software. The same post goes to explain that the biggest and craziest thing about the leak are the dark data sheets, log diagrams, and very log files for every component. In other words, the plans to hardware itself.
Mm-hmm.
This hardware description language is used to describe circuits via code. So with this, you can learn how every single piece of the this modern vintage modern gamer, I think it was. The news from he does say in his video on you should follow. He's a pretty good. He actually talks about retro gaming and all that. Modern vintage gaming, MVG. MVG on Nintendo leak. He basically explains that, well, nobody who's really in the retro scene, like coders and people who are doing, their own retro consoles and emulation, are gonna touch
Mm-hmm.
because this has all. I mean, first of all, this is still proprietary data,
Proprietary.
and that means that most cases Nintendo is well within its rights to sue the crap out of people.
Oh yeah.
Nintendo is known to be very litigious. So when it comes to this, also remember that now, according to Retro Gaming, also the fact that even Nintendo has, closing last year, they went after ROM sites and stuff like that. So they will not hesitate to sue how to deal with the problem. I see this MG describes it, and I believe it. It's also important because we are in many ways in still a retro kick. We have new retro consoles coming in, and well, repricing. This could slow down the some new retro consoles. Although I think there hasn't been a retro 64 yet, and I think they probably the last one would things that people will still not have in their homes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ready to available will be what the two, right? That's how far people might be willing to go because there's a lot of Wii's out there, not as many Wii U's, and also this kind of affects also a little bit of how bringing all games into right because the idea is that if you get the keys to the castle, you know what you're doing. You can release basically copies of every game out there, make and
Yeah.
emulate them on PC or other platforms. And so that goes, one of the reasons why Nintendo went after the ROM sites. They want people to buy the games again in their new platforms, their services. So yeah, expect lawsuits, cease and desist, and even prosecution. I'll be surprised. They tend to, at
Hmm.
least sue them into.
Yeah, although I'm still curious to see what will come with it in terms of like the creator stuff. I mean, people will either have to be like very hush hush about it if they do develop anything based on this information. instead of trying to, I guess, either blunt force or reverse engineer a lot of the software.
And another final piece of news is, and this is, I guess it kind of connects to what we're trying to talk about here. Warzone will connect the different Call of Duty series. Professor Brown, it will evolve when new games appear and become the through line that connects them all. Surprisingly, massively successful Call of Duty Warzone won't suddenly call it quits when the series moves in from Modern Warfare to the next entry series. Activision hasn't really revealed exactly how Warzone will adapt as Call of Duty marches forward, but the different sub-franchises will apparently leave their mark. At the moment, Warzone is very much a Modern Warfare spin-off, drawing everything from operators to its people. Call of Duty is free, though eventually players will be duking it out in a new game and then another and another until the death of the universe, but Warzone won't be left behind. Kind of uncharted territory here. Infinity War character Taki Health Gamer Gen. Call of Duty has been a very regular cadence for many years, but Warzone has made us think exactly how content and Call of Duty is a genre in itself. The different branches of Call of Duty tree, but they're all connected. Hey, Warzone through line that connects all the Duty. It's going to be really cool to see how the different out of focus, but Warzone is their game as service, and the regular yearly or 2 or 3 year releases are going to be plugins.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this kind of ties in to what we're trying to talk about canonicity and long running franchise, especially things like MMOs. Even long, we talk about Yakuza, for example, how many games Yakuza. And when you rely on story to really amp up, gauge your players, or at least give it a significant amount of flavor, there comes a point where people become very attached to the events of those stories, plot lines,
Yeah.
and the question of canonicity. Now, I want to quote, set up the from Canon, which people were like, TV. This particular article is well written, so I think it does provide a little bit of insight. Um, the concept canon, that which counts in terms of continuity. Canonicity, as it applies to a television series, is essentially different from literary content. For example, there's no question which Sherlock Holmes story is the first known biblical literary works to which it was applied are canonical. By Doyle
Mm-hmm.
R, everything else. However, the concept of canonicity is almost entirely an invention of fandom. Writers will ignore, include, or change whatever facts they damn well like. Not to say that writers totally lack a sense of continuity, but it's much weaker concept than canonicity presented by fan communities. Writers can tweak continuity quite a lot while actively breaking by using strokes. Uh, and it talks about fan communities based on loose communities, fanatical, Star Trek being famous for it, but even Star Wars as well,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah, I remember the day when it was announced that Disney was doing away with I guess the expanded universe in the books.
Oh,
Apparently those have
well, the thing about the expanded, called expanded universe, I had a few of them, and now called Legends, respectively. The thing is that George Lucas said that they were not canon,
hmm,
in that supposedly he would not create anything counting on that, or that he had the final say on what was and wasn't canon. So
yeah.
the rule was this is not canon unless integrated. And of course, now we've seen how it got integrated in Star Wars. Characters have gone, and they have side stories and stuff like that. So I don't think it was a bad idea for essentially Disney continue the idea. I think a lot of people were expected that a lot of these stories were going to be brought into canon, and Disney
Yeah.
was like, no, we're just going to follow the same policy that George Lucas has. And why would you do that? That's the first question. Because and this is why the particular podcast script by Canon, it's very easy for you to lock yourself in errors and canon, right? Oh, I'm doing this. and you have to look at the writing process. In this case, video games, right?
Hmm.
We talked about before that writers, even in very story driven, lovers of um, storytelling type games and franchises, they only spend maybe at best a third of the time involved in this. They write scripts, they write ups, characters, stuff like that, and then everybody else takes over, right? So they take over the reins to
Yeah.
oh, you're gonna have spend a lot of time and money on the actors doing mocap. Well, that's not the writer's job. That's the director's job. Mocap director, animator, whatnot, right? They're gonna make all kinds of changes. So right off the bat, writers don't tend to have as fine control over their work. Also, change a lot. The changes in titles like Mass Effect, for example, Dead Horse, where you had people coming in being a writer in one or two games, or even tying novels, and then you know, new installment comes out, like, well, hire someone else, right? Or you hire
Yep.
someone back, or you bring somebody else. You bring somebody else from. We're talking about, for example, Andromeda. Was it? No, it was an Andromeda. It actually was Anthem.
Mac. Oh.
Also, I think Andromeda, where they brought people from Dragon Age to work on this, and it was like, well, yeah, my style's not like this, so it doesn't. So they have to scrap all of that work and go with somewhere else. So,
It's. I think that's what happens when you have too many, I guess, cooks in the kitchen.
yeah, and also, and this has always been a problem, no matter what, keeping something running for long. You build up a history, right, a sort of backstory. That, uh, sorry, but it's a lot of the history is just stuff that people thought it was cool at the moment.
Hmm.
Mention here, a character there, something like that. That at best becomes essentially fanon or fan canon, right? Or fan service. The best you get is DLC callbacks and possible romance.
Yeah.
Nothing, right? So um, and so there you have it, right? So the process itself of making any one game, and we talked about this in making franchises and all like that, kind of precludes having strong continuity. Very hard to do. Also, you
Hmm.
got games like the Uncharted series and stuff like that, where again they just went episode to episode, and they kept the broad strokes of events and like, yeah, this happened in the past, but each one same.
Yeah.
Uh, then you have the Japanese problem, or what for people in the West might call the Kingdom Hearts problem, which is we create so much games based on one franchise and spin-offs and stuff like that there's so much crap that it's nigh impossible to keep continuity. In fact, attempts to keep continuity just by the sheer bulk of it just sort of collapse on the way.
It's the expanded universe of video games.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, and we know people know Kingdom Hearts. You have Yakuza, which now has 7 games, or 8 with Yakuza 0, which was also add their own own wrinkle to this. Uh, you have the Persona series, which actually is a spin-off from the Shin Megami series. I played Cold Steels in the Sky. At least I didn't finish it, but I played it, which was a um, a spin-off of a spin-off of a JRPG. And now I seen another spin-off of that spin-off that now they're selling. So it's like 3 layers of spin-offs from whatever original game started in 1980s, 1990s. I don't remember. You go to Wikipedia page, it's just like 11, 12, 13 installments. Final Fantasy, which is, you have Final Fantasy 10, 10 and a half, 10 and 3/4. And this is
Oh,
just one Final Fantasy, right?
actually, so well, I think it's like Lightning. You have Final Fantasy 13, 13-2, and then Lightning Returns Final Fantasy 13-3. With like Final Fantasy 10 is like my favorite like Final Fantasy. So yeah, you do have Final Fantasy you have Final Fantasy X, then you have Final Fantasy II, then the the I guess what is it called? The international version of Final Fantasy X-2 had almost like a little spin-off sequel to Final Fantasy X-2 in that copy. It's a completely different smaller game that's in there, but it does take place right after that. It's just called Final Fantasy X-2 Last Mission. And then the the remasters of the Final Fantasy X series had an unlockable audio file or audio drama
Mhm.
that's supposed to take place way after years after like the events of the game, and that is canon, which I didn't know about this. I had to read into it with a final like a sequel Final Fantasy novel that takes place also years after the events of 10-2, and it's like well, and I don't think that book's ever been translated to English, so
Mhm.
it's a Japanese only book. So it's like, oh, are we gonna get a Final Fantasy 10-3 at some point? I kind of doubt it, but I mean I'd buy it because I'm a Final Fantasy X fan. But I mean, it's like okay, all this and in that drama. So this is what I like. It illustrates this perfect example. In this drama, there is it follows these two new characters. One of them, she um she's been told by her mother that she is like the offspring of one of the heroes. It's part of the history of the first one, and he's a party member in that game.
Mhm.
They and so she's potentially her daughter, his daughter, and it's like I think they bring up the fact that it's like, well, yeah, we've had a lot of people claiming that that these heroes, the because there's a 10-year cycle thing that the heroes before us were like they had children and offspring, but they're all full of crap. And I'm not saying your mother's a liar, but like, it's kinda hard to tell to be sure. It just kinda it sorta sets up a potential, like, situation for a 3rd game, 'cause it just kinda ends on a cliffhanger, but it's sorta like that's like, "Ooh, let's end le what if this person in the 1st game had, like, this, a bastard child that's, like, we didn't know about before?"
Oops.
It's like it's almost having, like, the evil twin.
Mhm.
Actually, this series, this world has the potential of, like, all the bad guys that you beat are back! They came back to life, kind of.
Wow.
So, yeah, so then, of course, you this without taking into consideration, like, fan stuff,
Mhm.
and so and, of course, you that's the thing with, like, fandoms. It's like, when do you have the issue of, like, you have your fans who might have adapted, like, say, a story amongst themselves and have, I guess, built upon that story, which built upon the foundation, which is the original
Mhm.
stuff,
Yeah.
and then they built on it, and then, of course, a new game comes out, and they get disappointed because doesn't take into consideration the fandoms, like,
Canon.
stuff that they have done. Yeah.
And there's also tie-in media as well, right? Talk about expanding universe. Mass Effect has tie novels. Warcraft has a bunch of tie novels. Um, one could argue that Star Trek games are tie-ins to Star Trek the series, so they. One playing recently, BattleTech. BattleTech is essentially a spin-off or adaptation of several BattleTech games, including the original board game, role-playing game, and tie-in novels. And their canonicity is that only those things that are in the main books are canon,
Yeah.
and that anything that was animated short one season animated series in 1990s with or CGI, their video games. Those are not canon, specified otherwise. Although the new series of games is supposed to be canon, or at least is supposed to be canon compliant. Um, but what about canon? Let's talk about canon as a concept, because as the TV trope says, it's mostly when it comes to mass media, a fan thing.
Yeah, and so I think canon is important in a way just to, I guess, I think the original purpose of canon is to maintain I lost the word.
Continuity.
No, not
Continuity.
necessarily continuity. The immersion.
Okay.
To
Yeah.
keep the immersion with the audience. Like, I think of one of the first things that I kind of caught, like, in a book, reading, like, I guess inconsistent continuity would be with, like, Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
So in the fourth game, or in the fourth the fourth novel, he has the Marauders map, which tells him where, like, the um where everyone is, essentially. It real time, it, like, maps it changes to show everyone's location at the map at the same time. He ends up giving this to, like, who turns out to be the bad guy, and we never see him, or we're never told that he got that map back because he lent it to him. We never in the text is it anywhere they said he got that back. And in the fifth novel, he uses it, and there's no mention that, like, oh yeah, I got this map back from, after we resolved the issue of the fourth book, I managed to get my map back, and here I'm using it. He just uses it, and there's no explanation as to how he got it back. Like, you can sort of maybe assume that, like, oh, well, they uncovered the bad guy and he got his map back, but it's never stated.
I think in the no, actually it is stated, because Professor um, the professor who turns out to be spoilers for Harry Potter, the movies in the book.
Mad Eye Moody.
Not Mad Movie.
Oh.
Because Mad Movie actually is.
Yeah, he lent the map to Mad Eye Moody.
That's in the third book.
Actually, that's the fourth book. Mad Eye Moody's the fourth book.
Oh no, he gets it back in the third book.
He gets it back,
and then he lends it to Mad Eye Moody. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, they capture the bad guy. I guess they would have confident.
Yeah, but it's sort of like it's never said. It's like, well, what happened to this map?
Well, that's one of the things. Like, sometimes the stuff is not expressly told, and so it feels like, and this is one of the things that Renegade talked about. It feels like a discontinuity. It feels like a plot hole, right?
Yeah, and
because
stuff
you're not
like
expressly told how it could have happened.
Yeah,
right?
and that sort of that sort of breaks the immersion into the world. So that's why it's sort of important to because these are stories. Like, you could assume that he got it back, but we are given the thing with stories is that we have to be told, because we can't really make all those assumptions ourselves, because what if those assumptions are wrong?
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not in the case of, like, an unreliable narrator. Like, it's the only time where continuity holes might make sense is if it's somewhere in the text is explicitly told that the narrator is unreliable. So
yeah,
that's where, like, the holes might make sense.
Yeah. Oh, another thing about canon is that, and this is about continuity, is that in the hands of a good writer, ironically rather rare. I'm looking at you, Ronald D. Moore. You can use it not only for fan service, not only for callbacks, but actually evolve your premise. Right? That's what I call the evolution of premise. Like, okay, this happened. Let's explore all the cool things that this thing happened. And the tendency, again, because of how things are designed or TV shows are made, etc., the tendency is throw a good idea at the wall, it sticks, people love it, or whatever, it just works. The solution immediately, and then never talk about it again. And so you end up like a great example from the Next Generation, and even the original series, particularly Next Generation. People noticed that they kept using the same solution. The Star Trek, by the way, the similar problems.
Deflector dish.
It was a deflector dish. It was using some kind of phaser setting, personal phasers or ship phasers, whatever. Right? It was transporters. If the problem wasn't with the transporter tends to solve a problem. or it was done through the holodeck, which either tended to also be the source of the problem to begin with, right? So essentially, you only have four solutions to almost every problem. Oh, the fifth one, Picard talks, talks to people to death. It's like,
It's true.
yeah, you are,
I
Picard
mean,
talks to
rarely.
people, and four technological solutions, and that's it.
Yeah, at least sometimes it wasn't always like a Deus Ex Alien explanation.
Q showed up and we're like, oh, fixed.
Uh,
But you, and we were like, but you were the one who did the thing in the first place. Yes, but I'm a godlike alien, so I don't care.
ah, I put you guys. I put you guys in the path of a Borg ship. Oh, there we go. You guys
Yeah.
are free now, except
Uh,
those 14 dead crew members are
and the
dead.
fact that the Borg are still coming. Now they know you're here. We're already on their way.
Oh, something with like related to Star Trek when it comes to continuity. What always bothers me is Voyager, because this is where continuity has to be important, because you're specifically setting limitations, and that's the premise of the shows. You're trapped. You can't get crew members like recruited, but then they start like writing all these new crew members. There isn't like a ship. They didn't start off with like a ship manifest of, all right, how many people exactly do we have alive? Who are these people? I mean, they don't have to be strictly written out or written thoroughly or fleshed out quite yet, but have them sort of like in your back pocket so you can introduce later stories to them.
Yep.
I think of one where like there was this episode where they're going, it's supposed to be like a Nazi Anne Frank allegory with them flying through space, and then these aliens that control are paranoid of having telepathic species. So they're harboring some telepathic species and their own species, and they're only like, oh, we only have like these three alien species in our crew that have been seen, so that's the only people you see them hiding. But then later, and Tuvok being one of them because he's a Vulcan.
Mm-hmm.
And then in later episodes, there's all of a sudden this other Vulcan alien and as part of the crew member. It's like, well, where was he in that episode? Like, why weren't you hiding him? Like those are like the breaks in continuity, and that's just Voyager is just so notorious for those breaks in continuity. One of the biggest one was the you have a crew. I can't remember what this crew member was. He only shows up in season 1 as an active character, and every season afterwards he only shows up in time travel ones where they're when a crew member gets thrown back in the past on Voyager, he just happens to be there. But they're implying that he died at some point, but we never saw that. And they end up killing him in like the second to last episode off, because I get, oh, we were supposed to kill him off. Oh, well, let's kill him off now.
Mm-hmm.
It, it's it's sort of like that. That just kind of breaks your, especially when the continuity is supposed to be the premise of
Mm-hmm.
your series. That's the issue, and I think especially with something like Mass Effect, where that's sort of like the promise is like, hey, your choices and stuff, they're going to matter later on. That means, oh, so you're promising me a sense of continuity between these games.
Well,
So
I
I
think
mean,
there's three things we got to talk about. Four, but three. Uh,
yeah,
we talk about canon and sort of the overall work about how these things, all the back history and stuff, canon, which is slide. We talk about continuity, but I think also we got to talk about the idea of. And I
hmm.
think this is where it can become a trap because I'm
uh,
talking about evolving premises, right? People tend to say that if you have consistency, you have no change. And either people expect no change whatsoever, right, because of it, including writers. Oh, we can't touch this or we can't change this because status quo is king or God, or we're
yeah,
gonna break the
and
formula, whatever. But
that's the biggest thing with Voyager too.
yeah,
It seems like status quo is the king.
consistency is actually, if when used very well, it's a good path. Let me get an example from Babylon 5, which is a great on this. Is sort of the show that
Hmm.
taught me this. in most shows and most video games, etc., when you have, for example, a telepath or a mind bending thing comes in and to change a character. So, and usually a lot of comic books. Oh, Superman, somebody used red kryptonite, so now Superman is evil. So he gets cured of red kryptonite and goes back to being good guy again, right? But there's a character, spoilers for in 3 and 4 of Babylon 5. You should watch it, by the way.
Oh, I have. Yeah, it's
very good.
fantastic.
There's a character called Michael Garibaldi, the security chief of the station called 5. And one of the things that he has consistent with his character is that he's a recovering alcoholic, etc. Also, a very suspicious kind of guy. Now, he is a cop, right? He is a cop, an investigator. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is, not all at once, but slowly but surely, he starts getting being distrustful of the people in command that he's been working with. It doesn't happen all of a sudden. There's no green or red rock that shows up and it's like, oh, you're bad or whatever. And it starts happening slowly. And he basically goes and gets involved in his own plot and his own side story and all that. Pretty cool stuff. At the end of that, and I wish they had more time. They did a fantastic job with the time they had because was scheduling and canceling of the last season and then renewing it and all that. We learned what exactly happened. And this goes into an perfect explanation of what I talk about consistency. The bad guy who is a telepath who manipulated him explains that he didn't reprogram him, right? Typically, or use him like a puppet, like typical mind stealing, puppeteering, rewarding, whatever.
He hasn't been really quite Manchurian candidated.
Exactly. What he did was take those aspects of his personality, things that were already there, tweak them. So it turned essentially increasing sense of being somebody who questions authority and wants to do his own things, and also, is curious to a sense of increasing paranoia, right? Tweak those things, and then he put certain, things here and there so he could, and sort of retouch him once in a while and guiding him in the right direction. So Michael Garibaldi, the changes that he goes through are based on his character, and in fact, the bad guy says, I didn't alter you too much because in this universe there are other telepaths. So, and if you ever introduce a new personality or whatever, and somebody did a telepathic scan, there was a good chance they might detect it, and the jig is up. Like, oh, this guy got by mind power, so clearly it's not him, right? And then he has to earn redemption, and that leads him once again to form a model and stuff like that in season 5, and mistakes, etc., or blame himself for something. And I mean that works with what he has. So, it's character growth should not come out of nowhere, and plot points should not be shocking swerves.
Yeah, I always hated when they introduce, oh yeah, I've always had this fear of water, deep down in my past history and stuff, and it's like, never before has this been an issue, and all of a sudden it is.
And also, I think the fourth thing is nitpicking, right? Because often, and it can happen, it actually does happen a lot, you have cherry picking, nitpicking, where people who are essentially fans are obsessed with Canon. What they're really obsessed is with the things that they dislike, and they want to nitpick those little things to do what I like to call the fan analysis, which is justifying how they feel about things rather than an actual analysis of the thing itself, right? Which is, I link to the video here, but it's a good video. I mean, I don't agree with them 100%, of course, but one of the things that Renegade Cut talks about the Star Trek Generations movie is that
the changing shirts,
changing shirts and stuff like that. It's like, it happens, right?
Yeah, I mean that kind of falls more into like bad screen shooting and costuming and stuff rather than the writing. Like that, their uniforms changing does not impact the story at all, and why it's either good or bad.
Yeah. The other aspect of this, I think, is we're talking, and that's actually it's going along the continuity because you have people who are supposed to be on stage. Oh, no
Yeah, all of a
Rolexes,
sudden, yeah, all of a sudden they're not
no,
there.
no headphones or whatever. So you gotta, make sure or add something like, oh no, yeah, the thing goes to the lapel goes on the right side or left side, whatever happens, right? I mean, they do that. They actually hire people for television and movies. Um, but the thing about it also is that Canon can become a trap, or you can be tripped by Canon, especially from the fan expectation of people wanting more of the same.
Hmm.
And I think that's what happened, for example, with Andromeda. The biggest peeve I had with Andromeda, I said it many times before, is that when they did new things, for the most part, they were pretty cool. For the most part, and new characters and new things. But every time they went back to the well, every time they went, oh hey, remember this character that it's clearly no longer here and unimportant and has nothing to do with what's going on, you
Yep.
know, and they're 700 years. If they're alive, they're at least 700 years older than they were before. If they're
Saeed
Krogan or Asari,
Masani,
yeah,
Saeed Masani, a son is here.
for some reason, right? Because you remember that character, right? Or you have the sister of a joke character, and you're like, oh yeah,
Oh,
just so you can have
yeah, that was stupid.
and cringy because
Yeah.
you have this only one conversation. It's like, why are you even referring to this or rewriting, ironically retconning an entire DLC? And that's another aspect of video games. We have DLC, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which means, and the most substantial DLCs tend to be story DLC. So every time you introduce a DLC, you always run the risk of again retconning or rig changing, and sometimes you do have to retcon, and that's another video
Yeah.
whether you should or should not retcon, right? Whether you should not remake.
I
Um,
mean, like I wouldn't honestly, before we really knew much about Dragon Age Inquisition, I was going to make like a review of Mark of the Assassin that I
mhm.
never did. And just because I thought that was like the weirdest, like just kind of an odd DLC, especially kind of like, oh look, here's I guess a fan favorite Felicia Day. I guess she's a fan
And it's
favorite.
actually the only part of Dragon Age 2 that I actually liked and loved.
Yeah. And I honestly thought that they were going to build more on that because I'm like, I really don't see them building much on the plot of Dragon Age 2. And that for that really talk focused of kind of forgettable legacy DLC with the that magister guy. I thought that was kind of dumb. I'm like, I kind of see them kind of, especially because I think Inquisition. Oh, hey, Mark of the Assassin is talking about having Kunari agents that aren't of the Kunari typical Kunari race. So these are just other races that happen to be part of the Qun. So that makes sense with Inquisition. So now you're going to go fish these guys out and stuff. So I thought they were going to build on that. No, they built on another DLC, and that's sort of interesting that they completely didn't like built. They almost ignored the second game, the primary entry, and just went with oh all this stuff from that DLC. Yeah, that we'll just continue on from there.
And if they wanted to do that, they wanted that angle, there's another DLC that actually was better, which is a Dragon Age Awakening, which
Yes,
had the architect, right? And had the thing. So like if you wanna,
I wanted to see more of that guy.
but I guess and that's another thing. You have different people and you make certain decisions that necessarily are part of canon themselves, but they're about canon while you approach. And one of the decisions that the designers of Dragon Age were were not really going to have the what's interface, what's
The blight.
the blight be the center of another game. Never
Mhm.
again would the blight be that important. So even in Inquisition, where the bad guy blight related, it's not really the blight. So it's sort of has the flavor of the original game. Not really, because
Yeah,
his threat is not
it's
that he's gonna
not
bring
another
back the blight, right? Or a new
yeah,
version of the blight, right?
it's not another like God, is it the blight is called the disease or is it or is the blight the
The blight is everything. So this is the
yeah. I was gonna
corruption.
say that
It's
because there's
the dark
because
spawn,
the
another dark spawn.
yeah, I know, but like the events of the first games refer to the fourth blight.
Yeah.
and then like this was the fourth blight. So like Inquisition wasn't the fifth blight. It was just it just happened to involve like some weird darkspawn creature thing.
One of the people that became the original Darkspawn, right?
Yeah, and
Trying to
and
replicate the thing with the Darkspawn, which then there's a DLC that's okay. Yeah.
maybe the reason why we didn't follow the architects because they made him like an oh, do you let him live or die? Well, if they choose to die, well, we can't do anything with that character now. But it's not like they haven't been known uh to bring back characters that you for sure killed off before. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm alive now. All of a sudden,
Liliana? Really?
yeah, Liliana was sort of explained. I guess if you make the right choices and you play Trespasser, her little um light screen thing at the end, I think implies that she's some sort of lyrium ghost. But Oghren can die in the main game.
Mm-hmm.
You can piss him off, get into a drunken ball, and choose to kill him. He shows up in Awakening regardless.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh yeah, you try to kill me, but I'm fine. I'm fine."
Yeah, those are the things that are jarring, right? This
Yeah.
is there is a use for canon, there is a use for continuity and consistency. Uh, the best way, again, and this when we talk way back and to try to why Mass Effect 3 didn't work for as a trilogy and how hard it is. We talked probably 2 years ago about that. One of the things I suggested was that you would need sort of a master or mistress of canon, right? You would need someone, and you do have that. Like Star Wars has people that take care of that. Basically
Yeah.
they're fandom managers. That's what they really are. They're just people who interact with the fans. Like, yeah, well, this is good, this is bad, and this is what we're doing, right? But you would need somebody whose job would not simply do in game continuity, but do it across multiple
Yeah, they
games.
would need like a
Yeah,
lore
a
master.
lore
Their
master,
own like
right?
walking Wikipedia of this
Uh,
franchise.
and deal with that.
Yep.
Or maintain this at least the same writing group and have some guidelines like, okay, this is where you can sort of veer off, and I mean, lore master, somebody who kind of checks off like, yeah, that seems too far fetched, or hey, listen, this is the idea that we were working on. You guys want to try that one, right? I think at the very least, work with what you have first, and then sort of go off, because
Hmm.
I think new writers always want to put their own imprimatur. They want to put their own stamp on things. And sometimes they focus on things that they think it's cool ideas, and it's like, yeah, but that doesn't matter. You can do whatever,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, and the video itself in Reddit Cut makes a difference between a plot hole and canonicity. Right? What people expect,
Yeah.
we talked about that before. I do believe that it's not a bad impulse to want canonicity, right?
Hmm.
It's just, and in this case, for our fellow geeks and nerds out there,
Pick your
remember,
battles.
and that's why I started with this. Remember the conditions in which the art forms are created. They are limitations. Right? Some of these stuff is inexcusable. Mass Effect. But other stuff, it just happens, right? It's just a minor detail here and there, something they didn't explore, and that's fine too, right?
Yeah.
As Steve Chais like to say in his videos, it's fiction, right? It ain't
Yeah.
no other
It's like,
way.
oh yeah, you don't need to like, oh well, now you have to write like this extra story explaining why this cup in the background was there 1 second, and all of a sudden was gone the second screen or something like that.
Yeah.
Also, I would have to suggest this. I didn't bring this up, but I recalled like Power Rangers. There's an episode called Forever Red, which is supposed to be this 10th anniversary tribute to Power Rangers. The director had a in his mind when he wrote this episode, his fan fiction about like this hoax storyline called Scorpion Rain, that was canonical with what he wrote for that episode, which was really stupid. It's like, don't do that. Don't add your fanfic into lore if you ever get into a position like that. Like
Unless it's good fanfic.
nah, like honestly, like I would not if I ended up somehow being a writer on Mass Effect. Oh, Mass Effect Andromeda 2, I would not assume that Garrus and
Come
Male was
on.
default Shepard, and Garrus were
Yeah,
definitely an item.
yeah. I mean, okay, I get that part. Yeah, yeah. Or Miranda Lawson and what's her name? Were an item.
Jack.
Jack. Yeah. Well, there you have it. So that was our discussion. We brought a lot of stuff back from pack episodes, and we talked about it again. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for the follow. In 1984. Hopefully, I got that again. Well, if you want to see more of Chapelmon, where can we find you?
You can find me at Chapelmon pretty much everywhere. I am Chapelmon_Aragon on Twitch and Twitter, and I'll be on in a few hours to continue my playthrough of Black Sad, our silent playthrough, trophy hunting playthrough. I've actually had some interesting developments in terms of my goals with like the deductions and stuff. Again, this game's very buggy, so I can't tell what's supposed to be a bug and what's supposed to be a feature. Yep.
Keep your eyes on those eyebrows.
But it unfortunately, actually, yeah, there have been a couple of weird animation glitches. It's apparently today it feels very glitchy. But I'm talking about like in terms of its mechanics. Like, is this supposed to be a bug or a feature? I can't tell. But I'm primarily on YouTube. I'm posting all of those playthroughs up, re-uploading them up there, as well as I got a various amount of context. You could see our reference about the eyebrows, the infamous eyebrows of a certain horse character in that game.
And of course, you can find me here. I just finished a playthrough of Siege of Dragonsphere, the DLC from Get the Hand Edition. I was disappointed. So I'm gonna probably take a break, and hopefully I'll start Republic Commando. I never actually played. It'll be a very good Star Wars first-person from the Xbox era. Got it on G, so if I make it work, I'm gonna play that. And not, then we're gonna continue with Baldur's Gate 2 Enhanced Edition. Those are our choices. And of course, on Sundays from 2 o'clock to 6 Eastern US, you can find me running a game called Iron Claw, the Isles, or the Iron Claw, the King's Chosen, where a group of adventurers try to steer their way through political machination and violence of the as the time for the king's demise. So, thank you, Red, for coming, and as always, we'll see you. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.